Well, hello there everyone. Mario Kart World is out, and assuming you don't constantly doom scroll on the internet, it's a ton of fun. I don't think it's better than 8 Deluxe or DS, but I'd comfortably put it in third place, even beating out Double Dash and Wii, plus it introduced a new generation to the glorious trash fire that is Darkside Phil. The new trick system is great, knockout tour is addicting as hell even if I suck at it, and the subject of today's video, the tracks are a ton of fun, and I wanted to rank them from worst to best, and by worst to best I mean least favorite to favorite. There's technically only 30 tracks in the game, but Crown City and Peach Stadium are both different enough that I figured it was worth giving them each 2 spots. A few disclaimers: most of the tracks I will be looking at from the perspective of their standard 3-lap races and grading them off of that, with 3 major exceptions. Second, my online is terrible, so this is more so done from the perspective of 150cc single player or local multiplayer. Also, I'm really bad at wall riding tricks, so don't expect to see too much of that. Anyways, let's get into it with the only track in the game I'd consider outright bad. Number 32, Koopa Troopa Beach. Welcome to the only track in the game I'd consider outright bad. Also known as Baby Park at Home, it's just a circle you drive around with a very small number of bumps you can kind of trick off of. It's 5 laps to try and make up for its smaller size, but it's also just large enough that not really anything interesting is going to happen. There's enough space that hazards are really a non-issue. Baby Park worked because of the absolute chaos of Double Dash's items, and it worked in 8 Deluxe because it was treated as a zero-gravity track, meaning hyper-aggressive play and a 7-lap course was encouraged. Here, it's just 2 minutes of driving in a circle with music I'm really not a fan of, and even with 5 laps, this is still probably the shortest track in the game, being done in 2 minutes. In fact, the only one that was quicker was Mario Circuit, and not only is that a classic track, that track still has a decent bit more going on in the course design. Here, it's literally just 5 laps of nothing, with the most fun being that you could potentially lap one of your opponents before the course ends, but that's not saying very much. Number 31, Desert Hills. Alright, so we're out of the bad tracks at this point, but Desert Hills still falls pretty dang flat for me. There's just not a lot here, and it's 3 laps around a desert with very little changes outside of the increase in Easter Island heads, plus the track is very short, averaging around 45 seconds a lap. It does get a few points for having the Easter Island heads become more and more present as obstacles, but that's only in one part of the track, and it's an early track, so I'm not as harsh on it as Koopa Troopa Beach, but it's just not that interesting of a track with music I'm not a fan of. Maybe it's supposed to be where Sarasa Land is located in this relation to this iteration of Mushroom Kingdom, but that's all I got. Not a track I'll go out of my way to pick, even if it shows up compared to other transit tracks on the online random options. Number 30, Crown City 1. Crown City gets on here twice because it appears in 2 different cups, and they are not the same racetracks. The first time around, it acts as your introduction to the connected courses, and it's okay, I guess. Personally, I actually like a lot of the later connected tracks due to a lot of them turning into Mad Max levels, but this one is pretty tame with very little actually going on, but it is a tutorial track, so that is understandable. Then you reach Crown City proper, and as much as I'd love to sing its praise, it honestly feels even simpler than Mario Bros. Circuit, which was the first track, and I'm not sure why. The only real addition is slightly more perilous track design and gliding being introduced. The thing is, you just do a lap once and that's it. A lot of other connected tracks use either their first or final lap variation, which can be interesting, but for some reason this one uses the lap 2 variation, which is the least interesting of the 3, so it gets a spot here near the bottom of the list because the second Crown City is much better in my opinion. Number 29, Dino Dino Jungle. This place hurts me because I love Dino Dino Jungle back on the 3DS, but sadly this is very little dino and not even a lot of jungle. You're just going around the damaged factory with the dinos on the loose, which is kind of neat, but there's no real stage evolution outside of a T-Rex appearing once or twice to look scary, and the Brontosaurus dude occasionally being a track hazard. Sadly, outside of a single one being usable as a grind rail and the Triceratops being a pseudo ramp, there's no real interaction with the dinosaurs here. It's fine enough as a track, but it doesn't live up to some of its older variations. I was wanting Jurassic Park, and we got Jurassic Park 2. Number 28, Peach Stadium 1. Peach Stadium is the other track in the game to show up twice, and it's weird because it marks both the halfway point of the game as well as the second to last stage in the story mode, if you can even call it that. And neither of them are anything too crazy. It has some fun jumps and good track layout, but it's pretty much a B-tier track with zero track evolution on laps 2 or 3, which is probably why I like the second version of it a bit more, where you're actually having to go and reach the stadium first. Music is nice at least, and I can say we're firmly into tracks I wouldn't mind picking if they showed up in the rotation at this point. It's just we're not in anything that I'd go out of my way to play. Number 27, Salty Salty Speedway. While this track isn't bad, it's probably the most forgettable track in Mario Kart World. And by that I mean I forgot about it when making this list until I realized I only had 31 entries scripted. I like the Venice, Italy shtick going on here, but there's another track literally right before it that I think handles that idea a good bit better. But a real issue is about half this track is on the water, and water tracks are at their most fun when there's crazy waves or obstacles for you to use tricks off of, or, you know, things you have to dodge. While here, it's just kind of flat and calm. Now, in terms of places I'd like to live, this is probably number 1 on the list, but as far as the track, well, I don't know. The city part is nice, and it even has a costume vendor, which is a nice touch since it's one of the populated areas of the world, but I think it's more interesting as a place to visit and free roam than an actual, track to race on, and it's a track right before Dino Dino Jungle. So, you know, not really winning any awards. I wouldn't mind some Yoshi's Pizza though. That's some pretty cool advertising. Number 26, Peach Stadium 2. Peach Stadium returns as the penultimate track in the Special Cup, making it the second to last track in the game, and the last time you drive on the road to your destination. I feel a bit conflicted on this one because, at its best, this feels like a Mad Max Fury Road with a sheer item chaos, but unless RNG is feeling chaotic, it just becomes a standard race, and yeah, there are some cars to dodge. And I do like all the decorations along the road. It makes it feel more like a big celebration as the last big exhibition race before entering Rainbow Road, which the game does a surprisingly good job building up as well. So I give it some points for that. Though, it's not that crazy of a track. I will at least say getting another entrance to the stadium is cool, and getting to see the chain chomp that I guess Peach has as a pet or a guard dog is kind of funny. Plus, hey, more costume vendors. Once you make it past the chain chomp, you simply run a lap around the stadium until you reach the finish line, and it's simple, but honestly, I do get some enjoyment out of it, and I think Peach Stadium works better when it's a single lap track. Though, that's just my opinion, and I understand a lot of people probably wouldn't agree with it. I like this track well enough, it's just not anything super crazy. Number 25, DK Pass. This one might be controversial as it is a legacy track, but I'm gonna be honest, I was never a super big fan of DK Pass outside of that one hill you could go up to get either a bullet bill or a golden mushroom. I don't know. I like a lot of snow tracks, but for some reason this one just never did it for me. Something about it just feels meh to me, and I can't say why. This is probably the track I had the least to say about out of them all. I can't explain why, I just don't really like it, and it doesn't mesh with me. So, it ends up here in the bottom half. Number 24, Sky High Sunday. Sky High Sunday was a pretty piss poor track in 8 Deluxe. It was not good, like, at all. You just went in a circle, but it didn't have any of the fun of Baby Park. But here, it got a massive upgrade in World. It is still just a big circle, but now it's filled with multiple paths you can choose, different levels of elevation, and grind rails aplenty. You can trick off the walls, but I'm absolutely trash at that, so I didn't. And overall, I like the track. It's simple, but the different layers and paths give it a lot more enjoyment than its 8 Deluxe variation. Overall, it's a fun track that while I was never really a fan of it originally, I was pleased to see how much better it is in this iteration. This is a track where, yeah, I think if you were to show me this as a Mario Kart track, yeah, okay, cool. It does a good job. Number 23, Wario's Galleon. This is our third track in a row to come from the same cup. Very consistently decent. Wario's Galleon is primarily a water track, but it gets things better because there's a lot of hazards, choppy water, and grind rails, so while it can be a leisure cruise through a pirate-themed putt-putt course, if you do just the basic water tracks, it's fairly okay. But if you like to do your tricks, it can be a fun playground for experimentation. Unfortunately, it's a track I'm just not that good at, so a lot of the time, I just get stuck treading water. Though, I could see this track getting much higher in the future, and you know what, it is cool, though it's kind of surprising how you have this almost haunted aesthetic going on, but no booze in sight. Number 22, Cheep Cheep Falls. If you think about it, Cheep Cheep Falls is actually very similar to Wario's Galleon, being primarily a water course, so a lot of my thoughts on it are more or less the same. I like it. There's good opportunities for tricks, and I could see it being much higher in the future. However, it beats out Wario's Galleon because it feels a little bit more twisty and turny than the Galleon does, and I simply like the music and aesthetic a bit more. We're finally in the territory of tracks I'd consider good at this point, not really any caveats thrown in there. There's really only 2 tracks in the game I actively dislike, while the rest of them are more a case of which track would I like to replay the most right now. And yeah, if I see this one show up in the lineup, I could see myself picking it. Number 21, Peach Beach. This is the track that comes before Salty Salty Speedway, and I feel like it's just an objectively better version of Salty Salty Speedway. Now, the first lap is extremely basic, but afterwards you get to head through the beach town itself, and driving along and tricking off the rooftops is a ton of fun, at least for me. Then you get to the final segment where you can either glide or trick your way down the building before getting to drive on this big jet ski segment that starts basic but then provides ramps to trick off of, walkways you can drive on, and Shy Guys on jet skis to avoid. It's one of the shorter tracks in the game, but I think it's a fun one. Though, it is surprising how many water tracks are in World when this game doesn't have any underwater driving. Oh well, maybe something for the future. Number 20, Mario Circuit. We're now in what I consider to be the top 20 best tracks in Mario Kart World, and we're kicking it off with a classic that you can totally choose in half with the new trick system of World. Or I would say that, but the laps are actually segmented to make sure you don't quite do that. Now, on one hand, it seems weird that this is the third to last track in the whole game, but I honestly like its inclusion in the Special Cup, because it acts as a way of showing how far the series has come, at least to me. Going through the original Mario Kart track, now with all these new crazy tricks and abilities you can use. It's a short track, and it's just a single lap broken up into 3 segments, probably to prevent you from Mario Kart 64ing the thing, but that also means it doesn't get gypped in the Grand Prix, and while I'm not skilled enough to pull it off, I've seen some crazy speedrunning tricks you can do for this track, and it's kind of insane. A great track to kick off the top 20, at least in my opinion. Number 19, Toad Factory. You know, until you unlock the Special Cup, this is technically the second to last track of the game, which is kind of weird to think about when you see it at first and you know it's associated with Toad. Looking at the layout, it just seems like one of the most straightforward tracks in the game. And then you get in there and you have crushers, moving platforms, tracks moving in separate directions, and some beams you can ride around and above for good measure, with some hills thrown in for a bit of extra tricking. It's a case where the course itself is fairly basic in its layout, but they threw enough stuff in here to make an engaging track to drive through, and it's fun. Really, at this point, the entire ranking is kind of pointless and reductive, but hey, I'm doing it anyways. Number 18, Crown City 2. The second time you go through Crown City is a much better deal, as you actually get to drive through the city this time, going through populated areas in the streets of the city with a few different routes you can take to get there, and a lot of grind rails making for more fun. And I felt like I should count this separately from the previous entry because it's really not the same track at all. Well, okay, lap 2 is the exact same, just taking place more at nighttime, so it looks a bit nicer and kind of feels like a proto Rainbow Road sort of thing with the way some of the track design looks. Then upon reaching the final lap, you're required to go the long way around the city to see what it has to offer, and I just like the track overall. It's got nice music, it's got nice visuals, and I kind of like the more populated aesthetic that a lot of World has going on here. The final lap is pretty easy, but it acts as a sort of cap-off to seeing everything Crown City has to offer, and overall, I think it makes for a great track to bring back and show what it's truly capable of. Number 17, Shy Guy Bazaar. Shy Guy Bazaar is kind of a classic track, but now it's in the daytime. It's one of those layered tracks where you can spend a lot of time on the streets like a peasant, or you can be a weirdo who spends 80% of the race on the upper levels. That being said, the layered nature of the tracks makes it more fun because you can just go however you want throughout the place. You can go through the stalls, you can go down below, you can even go above. And what's interesting is if you actually go down below, you'll find a mask shop. The multi-layered track design is nice, and overall it's a good track. My only real gripe is I'm not personally a fan of the music, like, at all. But hey, everyone's got different music tastes, so I won't judge it too harshly for that. Number 16, Mario Bros. Circuit. The first track of the game, the first impression that players receive, and how is it? It's really good. Great, even. However, I think 8 Deluxe still has a beat in terms of presentation and feelings of excitement, but still, this starting track has a fun layout and does exactly what it needs to in order to show off the game's new trick system, and especially rail grinding. The Mushroom Cup itself is here to teach you about the game's different mechanics, and I think they do a respectable job. That's why we still haven't seen 2 of the remaining Mushroom Cup tracks yet, in fact, despite being in the top half of the list now. Throw in a bit of alternate routes for the trick masters, and you got yourself an excellent starting track for players to get their feet wet. Overall, great first impression, great job. Number 15, Moo Moo Meadows. Moo Moo Meadows being a part of the final Grand Prix you can select at least during the start of the game is just funny to me. Anyways, Moo Moo Meadows is a track that surprisingly does a bit of layering for trick platforms and rail grinders, but most of it is the same track you know and love, with the Moo Moos loving to get on the track as the laps go on. Plus, an optional opportunity to enter glide mode is cool in my book, and the Monty Moles are a fun potential obstacle, but often they're just more opportunities to perform tricks, which is still a plus in my book. Great music, fun track layout, and it makes good use of the game's new trick system. It's a bit odd that it's such a late game track, but I'm not complaining, I'm happy it's here at all. Great entry, glad to see it back. Number 14, Bowser Castle. Bowser Castle is the final track of the game that you can initially access, and I gotta be honest, I feel a bit mixed on it. The build-up in the Grand Prix is really cool, as you ascend to the sky, and you reach it, and the track itself is filled with lava, potaboos, meteors, and impossible gravity-defying stunts. But, I don't know, something about this track just doesn't hit the same as 8's Bowser Castle for me. Or, it's just really freaking short as well, where a lap takes barely a minute. I still like the track, and don't get me wrong, it's great, but it's in this awkward spot because it's good, it just doesn't live up to its predecessors, as instead of an S-tier track, we get like an A- castle track. A good track, and as the initial final track of Mario Kart World, I think it does a great job. It's just that the competition in the world is very tight. Number 13, Boo Cinema, the obligatory haunted track of the game. You would think something like Wario's Galleon would have boos in it, being an abandoned shipyard and all, but nope. Here's a haunted theater with boos all around. The track is basically split into 2 halves. The theater itself that you drive around, and the production you'll launch up and dive on into the cinema itself, where you see a surprise-looking Princess Peach in a haunted castle off in the distance. This track honestly feels more like something you'd see out of some older Mario Kart games, and I love that. It's creative, fun, has great music that changes when you're in the movie and when you're out of the movie, and it's great, but sadly, it does fall short of the top 10 for me because there's no real evolution to the track. I kinda wish either the movie would have changed or become more dramatic on each lap, but that might have been hard to do in multiplayer. I don't know, I haven't seen this game on a programming level, so I can only speculate, but still, Boo Cinema is a great track and a great addition to the Mario Kart roster. Number 12, Great Block Ruins. This track is another fun one that feels right at home in classic Mario given its overall isolation from the world, because you have to kind of ascend into the sky to reach it, and you ascend via a waterfall, which is pretty neat. It kind of makes me think of Sky Garden, and overall, I really like the track layout, visual design, and the music's pretty good as well. Though admittedly, I'm less fond of the prolonged flying segment, where I swear it's a coin toss if you get murdered by a projectile or not. At least Lakitu's quick in this game. Throw in the layered paths for different options, and you can take on, well, a bunch of different options as the laps go on. I think you got yourself a winner of a track here. Just be careful not to fall off, or you're going to be turning into that dude from Speed Racer.
He's going over that cliff! Ah!
Number 11, Choco Mountain. 10 and 11 are both really close in my opinion. In fact, I was swapping them back and forth constantly when making this list, but I think I'm going to settle on this set here. Choco Mountain is one of the classic tracks coming back, and it's an absolute banger. I like this different iteration of Choco Mountain. It's not quite the same as the ones we're used to, but I think it still captures a similar vibe, though it's now part of an oil, or I suppose chocolate drilling operation. It's a trick-heavy track just like the one that's upcoming on this list, And though it's got a few tighter turns and it has some charging chucks thrown in on the track to be your obstacles, which is fitting for the second to last cup of the game. Really, a lot of my thoughts towards both this track and the next one are similar. They're really, and they can provide a decent challenge. It really is just going to depend on, do you like a more hazard heavy track or do you like a more trick heavy track? And I think right now I'd prefer a more trick heavy track. Number 10, Wario Stadium. Entering the top 10, we have another classic. And honestly, Wario Stadium is one of my favorites from my childhood. I played a ton of the DS version in particular. Though, this is an early game track, I think that it benefits heavily from the new trick system, as it's a big rally heavy track where the game outright wants you to start performing some tricks for the audience to keep your speed up over all these jumps, both large and small. There's also a bit where you can go and ride on the wall, but I'm really freaking bad at it, so, I can't give it any points there. While you can't exactly cheese out a quick win via some exploits like you could in Wario Stadium's of old, this track is still a fantastic track that has more than withstood the test of time and remains one I always enjoy coming back to. It's a great time, and I like playing it each time around. Number 9, Starview Peak. Starview Peak is your obligatory pretty as hell ice track of the game, and this time around it's got some gravity defying as you go through Rosalina's castle before heading across a river of stars while the aurora shines in the background. It's honestly one of the simplest tracks in the entire game, really just being a glorified figure 8, but the green and yellow tracks do provide some options, and it is one of the early tracks in the game. Plus, as tracks go on, more item boxes begin to populate the river, which can add to the chaos sometimes, while being backed up by one of the best songs in the game. Though, I can only put it so high because it's a very simple track compared to the other top entries, and you don't really mess with the actual Starview Peak at all unless you're on Knockout Tour. But damn it, it's so pretty and I do enjoy running through it, so you know what? I'm putting it up here in the top 10. Number 8, Whistle Stop Summit. We have ourselves another track from the game's very first cup, and Whistle Stop Summit does exactly what it needs to as an early track. The primary layout is simple, but there's side paths that can be taken for riskier plays, great music to listen to, and a heavy emphasis on the grind rail gimmick. And if you weren't familiar with grinding before this track, you definitely will be by the time it's all over. Add in a train that is constantly moving around the track and acting as a particularly dangerous obstacle that can be avoided entirely by simply traversing the track in a timely manner, but also adding an extra wrinkle that leads to a fantastic early game track, and it can also be very encouraging to play aggressive in this track.
Please don't smash into it.
And to think this isn't even the best track that the Mushroom Cup has to offer. Number 7, Dry Bones Burnout. I don't know who decided to associate Dry Bones with Dia de los Muertos, but I approve. The music is an absolute bop here, and it leads to the track having its own very distinct style. The track itself is also nice with multiple points for you'll have upper and lower paths that can be taken, as well as plenty of opportunities for grinding and tricks. It's also the track that focuses on the lava hazard. Unlike some hazards, lava makes you spin out and lose coins when touched initially, but you have a second to get back onto land. After that point, you'll be counted as out of bounds and you have to get picked up by Lakitu, making it a very punishing hazard for careless or unlucky players. Overall, a great track to cap off the game's 6th cup, with awesome music, a good layout, and great visuals as a bonus. I like it a lot. Number 6, Dandelion Depths. Visually, Dandelion Depths seems like it'd be a fairly early game track, but it's actually fairly late game. But it's also so freaking pretty. The overall layout is relatively simple. The above ground segment feels somewhat comparable to Mario Bros. Circuit or Whistle Stop Summit, but without the extra guardrails, so careful not to fall off. Of course, that all changes when you get underground and are treated to one of the prettiest locations in the entire game. This looks like Uriah from Xenoblade 2. Throw in some upper and lower levels, multiple branching paths that loop back in on one another to keep things fresh, and you've got an amazing music track to accompany it. Yeah, I love these remaining tracks, and honestly, 7 through 4 I could see swapping places with one another in the future. They're all that good, they're all that close. Number 5, Faraway Oasis. On the surface, Faraway Oasis seems like it'd be another early game track alongside the likes of Mario Bros. Circuit, and while it's still in the first half of the game, it does a good job feeling like a proper mid-game track. We once again have different layers and paths you can take, but this time around the choices are between land, water, and rail grinding at times, with tons of ramps and little drops providing opportunities to trick off the courses constantly. It's a track I found myself playing and enjoying every time I race, and whether that's part of the Grand Prix, online mode, or just casual play. Speaking of online mode, I feel like this is the track I run into the most, as it's been the one I think I've raced on about 20 plus times at this point. And it also stands out to me because it was where I was able to maintain a lead for the final 20 seconds of a race, stopping not one, not two, but 3 red shells all right before the finish line. It was really cool. Number 4, Airship Fortress. As far as classic tracks go, this one is my favorite. Airship Fortress is basically the exact same as its counterpart in Mario Kart DS, with its awesome music, Bonsai Bill Hazard, and giant cannon that would really suck to get stunned out of when you're mid-flight. The main track has been left completely untouched and very faithful to the original, but they've now added in some grind rails that can be utilized to turn more of the airship into a track than before. The track I know and love from DS is here, just with a little bit extra. Or maybe a lot of bit extra considering some of the crazy skips I've seen posted online. Either way, I'm more than happy that this track was brought back. It's my personal favorite from Mario Kart DS, even beating out Waluigi Pinball. 10 out of 10, would race again. And the top 3 are somehow even better. Number 3, Acorn Heights. Out of any track in the game, Acorn Heights is probably the one I would point to show someone this game. Acorn Heights is also the track that's here to kick off the game's special cup, the very last cup of Mario Kart World that must be unlocked by earning a trophy in the 7 other Grand Prix. I just want to say, this track is another amazing track theme. In fact, this one might be my favorite song in the entire game. But regardless, the track is also just really freaking good. It feels more in line with the older Mario Kart tracks where things can get a lot narrower, but the track works in World because the game gives you multiple choices for paths to take, each with their own benefits and risks. Flying lets you avoid hazards, but you miss out on the boost pads, and hazards below can be dangerous. Meanwhile, you can stick to the leaves to keep your tricks growing, but if you drop a trick, you're likely going to fall down below. Then there's the 4-way branch that lets you choose from left to right, with the leftmost path having the booster pads while the 2 center pads are generally shorter, but the far right one is clear of the giant acorn hazards. These little things all come together to make a really fun track that, in my opinion, is the best traditional track in Mario Kart World. If you're looking for the 3-lap structure, I think this is the best it gets. Number 2, DK Spaceport. DK Spaceport was the track that made me really want to get this game. The first segment is basically just built up with a chance for a few tricks or two, but the real treat begins when you get to segment 2, and the game just turns into a Donkey Kong level. At this point, you can either take riskier straight paths using jump pads, or you can rail grind. And then another segment has more opportunities for rail grinding and also jumps, but there are now barrels coming from the side, so you have to be more mindful of the obstacles. Then you get to the 4th segment here, which is really just to see, hey, have you learned how to trick off rails? Well, this is an easy chance to do so, as you'll be jumping from rail to rail, and if you do, you're given a chance to easily skip through this entire segment without much trouble and get it done in about 10 seconds flat. It's fun, it's basic, and it's a great teaching tool. Then segment 5 is here to teach you how to trick off walls, which is the high skill ceiling of the game I really suck at. Then, at the end, there's no more tricks. It's just a mad dash to reach the finish line while Mecha DK throws barrels. It's a short track all things considered, probably taking barely over 2 minutes. Well, probably the 3rd shortest in the entire game. But it's a fantastic cap off to the Mushroom Cup, and it's just fun. Number 1, Rainbow Road. Mario Kart World is a fun game, but it's interesting how you can't access Rainbow Road for a good while and have to complete all the other Grand Prix to unlock it. They do a pretty solid job building it up thanks to the Special Cup, and in even the cutscenes itself it says Rainbow Road has reappeared, it's treated like a big deal. And it all culminates here at the grand finale. The best Rainbow Road in the entire series, and you know what, I will die on that hill. I think the Grand Prix does it best as you start at Peach Stadium, racing along the water towards the Rainbow Bridge in the sky, wondering what awaits you.
Game theory, Mario Kart World is about dying.
But once you ascend and see the Rainbow Road proper, it's something of beauty, man. I was blown away upon hearing the music while the race takes place. Rainbow Road is split into 5 segments, and while the first is just build up, the remaining 4 are ordeals, as this is by far the longest track in the game, lasting roughly twice the length of any other track. Segment 2 has you going through the most traditional Rainbow Road, with tricks, branching paths, and no rails, so you know, try not to fall off, otherwise it's going to be very embarrassing. But it's a lot of fun, and I do think the road is just wide enough that you're not really going to go falling off anytime soon, assuming you're keeping a cool head, and you've gotten used to the controls, even on 150cc. At times like this, I'm glad this game doesn't have 200cc, although I imagine if they ever add it in, I will be trying it and falling off like an idiot a lot. But then you reach segment 3 where you pierce the clouds and you find yourself back on the water, but still also in the sky. Blitty Buddies, Lumas, and some other toads are chilling out here as we've reached what appears to be a hidden part of Starview Peak, all while a train begins flying through the sky, and it's your last time on the planet before you head back into space. It's very pretty, it's a good bit of build-up, and my god, I just love how this entire Rainbow Road looks visually. It's a feast for the eyes. Reaching segment 4, we actually get a drastic change in visual style as we go through a space station with the rainbow thwomps and the music turning into a remix of the title screen theme, as well as some split paths because I don't love this track enough. Honestly, the more space station aesthetic going on kind of reminds me of Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road, but thankfully I like this version a lot more than Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road. I'm talking about the main one in the Nitro Cup, not the other ones. I love that final bit with the build-up so much. The orchestrated fanfare, the rings in the sky, and then you see the train. It's just great. And this being Mario Kart World, the final part of Rainbow Road is going to give you 2 choices, a left path and a right path. Either way, here we have our trick ramps, boost pads, boost strips, grind rails, and also the giant star rail flying through space with Mecha DK, the T-Rex, penguins, and others all riding and cheering you on as the final stretch of the race here, marking the end of the road, the end of the Rainbow Road. A perfect ending to a perfect course, and you know what, it may be recency bias, but I'm comfortable putting this as the best Rainbow Road in Mario Kart and my second favorite course in the entire series. Now, what's number 1? Well, you'll have to wait for when I go crazy enough to rank all 96 tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe to find out. But until then, that's going to be the end of this video. And that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to get this one out a couple weeks ago, but I got busy with life and also got pretty sick. In fact, I've kind of had to keep the segment short because of that. But either way, I hope you found the ranking entertaining. Normally, I'm more of a boss ranking guy, but I kind of wanted to talk about more video game levels because there's more to games than just bosses, and it gives me a chance to talk about more games I like in general that I normally wouldn't get a chance to. Plus, this was an excuse for me to test out recording on my Nintendo Switch too, so hey, there's a bonus I guess. Either way, that's all for this video. If you liked it and want to see more content of varying quality, consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, take care everyone. Have a good day.